Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a new module that I have to show you today. This is the crossover made by Kato. It's a double crossover, and we've added a little bit of magic to it, like I always like to do. So stick around and we'll talk about it coming right up. Okay, so what we have here is an N-scale module. This is a single, and this is also a homemade module. Uh, the lumber I used was a 1x2. I believe they're called furring strips. I don't know, I just went to the lumber yard and I told the guy how big I wanted it. And then I had to, well, I'll show you all the construction in a little bit, but I want to get to the meat and potatoes on the top first. So what we have here is an N-scale double crossover. This is made by Kato, or Kato, depends on how you pronounce it. And this double crossover can be thrown either manually or it can be thrown with the controller, your DCC controller, if it's so equipped to do so. Now, I run on N-scale for myself. I run NCE power, but the controls for using this is universal as far as I know, because the receiver underneath is a DCC controller for accessories. So in theory, as far as I know, those should work with any system because it's DCC. It's not, just because it's manufactured by NCE. Like I said, as far as I know, it should be universal, just like any DCC is universal anywhere else, as long as they're, they follow the NMRA standards. But what I've done is added, like I said, a little magic to it. I have I'll show you when I flip this over, I'll show you underneath. The DCC accessory controller that I have under here also controls the lights. So let me show you what we do here. On your DCC controller, I select accessories, and this one happens to be number 3 because I have two other number 6 turnouts. So I would select on my controller number 3, hit my enter, and then I have a selector that says 1 or 2. So that gives me the option of throwing it to the left or right. And if I do this right, there it is, just like that. So now it also changed the lights. So now I know when I'm operating my layout, if I come to this and I see these red lights, then I know that the turnouts for the double crossover are all thrown to go from one track to the other and vice versa. So if I want to change that back, I simply go to my accessories again, hit number 3, enter it, and hit number 2, and everybody flips back to straight main line. So there is no crossover of any kind. Now, these come, there's a wire that's pre-wired to throw the turnouts using Kato, their own product. However, I've been able to modify it and use this NCE to do it myself and not worry about, well, I have a manual Kato that's sort of remote, but it's not. You know what I mean? It's still wired and it's still something that I have to physically do. This is all on my NCE power cab, so I just control it that way. The lights are also wired through that control so that when, like I said, when they're all thrown this way, all the lights will change to red simultaneously because they're all thrown the same way towards the crossover. And when like I said, when I hit this again and I flip them all back, they're all back to green. So that's the magic of that part. And I had to hook it up to the power supply, which is over here. We talked about this in the last video, which I'll link at the end. But that's all there is to that. And I thought that was a pretty neat thing that I was able to do. So what else did I do to this to get this going? Well, let's talk about the general construction here. Let me take these apart. Usually it goes pretty easy. There we go. Okay, so let's slide this aside. We'll just talk about this now. Let me move this. Okay, so what we have here is, like I said, it's a standard size module, meaning I had to cut all the pieces that would fit exactly like a module that's come from a different manufacturer, you know, like Osborne models or the ones I deal with Klondike. And so these are roughly 12¼ inches wide. Okay, maybe a little bit less, it's hard to say right off the top here, but these are all a single wide. Okay, when you get these from the manufacturer, they are, what is it, 310? Yeah, 310 millimeters. So that's what a standard module is width-wise, if you measure it that way. So all that is so it's a single. So this one obviously I built to a single. The construction. So let's turn it on its side here. So you can see this is the type of wood that I used, and I decided I didn't want to paint this like I usually will primer it and paint it. Well, I kind of jumped the gun and started doing the scenery after that. So I needed a solution. Well, when you go to a show or when you have it set up at home, you don't see the sides. You see the front and maybe the back. So what I did was, there is a piece of poster board here. I measured it, cut the poster board to size, took it out to my garage and spray painted it the same color as my other modules. And I've done this with another single wide module, which I'll show in another video. I then took that piece and I just glued it on here with white glue. White glue is my favorite thing to use. Don't need wood glue for this particular thing. White glue works just fine. And once I pressed it on there and used some clamps and some other things, and I held it down there, it's not going anywhere. It's just fine. So what else did I do here? Okay, so we've got a couple of little things going on here. You've got your switch tower or whatever you want to call that. And we have a little shed here. These are a couple things I just happened to see on eBay one day, and I said, oh, well, that works. That would fit into the what I'm doing. So I built these up, painted them, obviously, built them up. These are just plastic kits. Did my scenery work. Now, the track, I ballasted. Okay, so it comes, I don't have any track handy, but normally this track it's just gray, okay? Because the roadbed is attached to the track, and after that, it just looks okay. I mean, you can see, if you look hard enough, you can see the original color and underneath and all that. And when the trains are running, nobody really notices it that much. So the sides are what I was concerned with. So what I did is I went and took a paintbrush, an old one, went carefully along the sides because you can't get near because this little throw over here. You get glue down in there and it'll gum up the works, and this isn't cheap, okay? So, and I didn't want to ruin it. So I had to be very cautious around here, but then I went and glued up to right about in this point and a little bit on this side, and then did in the middle, and then repeated the process over here. So then I just took a little teaspoon. I love using a teaspoon because it's precise, okay? And I went and just little tap, 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 come along the side here, and you know, except where there's a hole or something that goes right into here, there's ballast. Like I said, I had to be really careful over here with the glue. You know, and then after I was done with that, you know, I spray it with a little bit of, I heard people use the rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol. I am old school and cheap, so the way I did it is I use a combination of water and dishwashing liquid. So, you know, you put in, well, I have a spray bottle that I use. It's a, you know, a good size one. And I fill that mostly with water and put in, I don't know, I don't even measure it. I just kind of I squeeze it till I think it looks good, which is probably maybe a half a teaspoon or less. I don't know, it's hard to say. It might even be a whole teaspoon for all I know. But I squeeze some in there, put the lid on it, shake it up really good, and you obviously you're going to get bubbles and stuff like that. But it mixes it in, and then I just go squirt, 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 come along the side here until I see that it's all damp. And then that's when you come along, and I use, I don't have any handy, I use regular mixture of 50-50-ish white glue and water. Okay, that's, like I said, that's old school. I mean, I know there's scenic cement out there. I think one of the things puts it out. I never used it because it's expensive. And when you got a lot to do, like my HO layout, when I have to redo my track, or if I'm putting in new track or whatever, I always go back to this method because let's be honest, when you're talking $8-9 a bottle or more, I don't even know what it costs because I haven't priced it. That becomes expensive after a while. But white glue, dollar store, you know, couple bucks, and that glue will last me a long time. As a matter of fact, let me show you right here. This is how I buy my glue. I buy it in bulk, and I have the little, you know, containers, and I'll be able to just carefully pour it in to that container, and then go, you know, do my, you know, I can eyeball it about 50%, and then you just have to stand there and shake it for 10 minutes or so, and it mixes up fairly quick. You know, it's not, and it doesn't come out too globby. It's sometimes it's a, you know, it's a crapshoot, or you might get it a little bit thicker than other times, but for the most part, it works good. But then there's the drying time. Of course, that's going to happen no matter what. And I use the same technique for putting my scenery down. Now, I don't, like on something like this part, let's just say, when I'm doing this, what I'll do is I will paint a base color. Like, okay, so this is countryside. That's obviously. So I went and painted a base color of like a brown. Maybe and I use regular watercolors, okay? Not watercolors, acrylics, that's what they call them. So I'll mix up, you know, if I want to put a little bit of green to it, because I know it's going to have, you know, this green material, I'll put a little bit of a color of green, either a darker green or maybe even a lighter green. and just mix them together and just brush it on there. And it doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to be covered with ground cover anyway. So what that stuff is just ground foam. Some are finer than others. Like this is regular ground. This is very fine ground foam. And that's majority of the time you use them for your grasses. And they're a variety of colors. But these are the larger pieces. And you use them like I have here for bushes. If you have trees, you can redo trees with them. So then we have up in here. So you can use a variety of techniques for making mountains. I believe, and don't hold me to this, but I'm pretty sure, because it's been a while since I built this, I used cardboard strips, okay? Obviously very short, and I kind of got a general shape for the mountainside, okay? Well, hillside. And then I cover them over with plaster cloth. Now that stuff is really cheap to find, especially, and you can get it in bulk on eBay. I don't have it handy, of course not. But they come in rolls and they vary in size, like, and width. Like you can buy them in an 8-inch wide or 4-inch wide, depending on what your needs are. I prefer to go with the 4-inch wide. And the reason I say that is it's universal. Like if I'm doing a smaller project like this, I can easily do the mountainside with a 4-inch, and I always overlap, you know. But if I'm doing something bigger, obviously I would wanted a wider one, but they're a little bit harder to manage. And when you're using the same containers for getting the plaster cloth wet, you kind of want to stick with one size. And then you know, okay, I have to cut it. I can cut it to so big. I know how much it's going to cover. It's kind of a trial and error thing till you get used to working with it. But you know, it comes along. So that's how that was made. And then you go over it with this, doing the same kind of methods as you would just on the flat surface. And that's, you know, painting it the base colors, and then coming along with your different ground foams. And I added these things are just generic stuff you can find. You do a search on Amazon or on eBay, and you look for HO scale trees, and well, you'll get a myriad of stuff. But these things are cheap. They're imports from China. And when we go over trees, I'll show you what I do to, like this one looks a little bit more realistic than this one does. And this guy's in the background, so I don't really care too much. But like these were from imports from China also. But then it's just a matter of, okay, you just laying out your scene. So I wanted to break sight lines. So I have the two mountains or two hillsides here. Okay, so they take up that side of the module. So I wanted a road that went this way. Well, if you look straight back, obviously you can see clear through to the other modules on the other side. So if somebody's looking straight down through, I went and put these two trees here, and that breaks the sight line. So this road just looks like it continues off into oblivion. So that's how that goes. So what did I put it on? Okay, so when you get a module from a manufacturer, okay, whoever that may be, it's all the same type of material. Like it's all, whether they use hardboard or they use some, I forget what, plywood or something. But for my homemade ones, I had to use what I had laying around. Well, I didn't have that type of material, but what I did have, and I'll show you on this side again, this top piece here, obviously you can see where it ends and where the wood starts. This is what's called humasote. That's an old school thing from way back, before I got started in model railroading. And what that is a pressed paper, okay? I think you might also see it as gypsum. I think that's another alternate name. It's a sound deadening material, and it's used in home construction, and or at least it used to be. Foam is taken over nowadays, but it's still out there. And these come in 4x8 sheets, and I tell you what, I use that on my HO stuff, and they're quiet as a mouse. So it does. That's a reason why it's so popular. Plus, it's easier if you're like handling track, like you've got road bed, then you put your track nails through. It's much easier to go through that than to try to go through a piece of plywood or something. Even if it's 1/4-inch plywood, it's tough. Okay, any wood. So this stuff is real easy to push a nail into to hold, or a pin to hold something in place. So we've covered the top side. Let's look at the bottom side. So here's the magic. Okay, so we don't have any wires going in for power, okay, into the module from anywhere. It's getting its power from the track, okay, both tracks, and this has to be a completed circuit for it to work. So it has to have power coming in on both sides. For you to travel or traverse a train through, you've got to have power on both sides. That's just how it's wired. Okay, so this is, if I can get you in the picture here, this is the NCE Switch Kat. Okay, so what I've done is not give power to the track, take power from the track. So on each end, okay, here's one here, and I believe, yep, on the other side here, we're taking, I had to solder, I had to take this off totally, both sides. I take this off, I take and I break this apart, basically. You can disassemble these very easily. So I took it apart, and the actual rail joiner, the metal part there, not this plastic part, the metal part, flipped it over and had to solder a wire to it, feed the wire back down through, push this all back into place, and then put it back on here. And when I was done, I drilled a hole on either side. Okay, repeat the same process on the other side. So we come through on here, and right here's the one, and here over on this side is the other. Excuse the tape. It just kind of, it's still, I need to do this a little more permanent. Get some hot glue or something on it. That can be a friend or it can be an enemy because it's really messy at times. But basically, that's all there is to that. That's getting power in. These sets of wires here are coming off of the dwarf signals that the Switch Kat will change. So all the magic happens in here. So all the wires, they come up and they meet here for all the ground throws, the lights. And under here somewhere, I think it's in here, yeah, that's where the controls for the actual double crossover come in, and everything is wired into here. So all my controls for the switches are over here, the power coming in, and then the going out on this side. This is where all the lights are wired. And over here is the section where I program it. Now there's a little wire, and I keep this as my generic wire for doing stuff. This would go, and there's 2 spots I have to put this in when I'm ready to program it. So I put that in, I power it up, and then within the controls of the power cab, I would then go and say, okay, this is switch number whatever. And this will remember regardless of whether it's plugged in. Like right now it's not plugged in, but if I plug it right back in, it's going to be, it's going to remember exactly what it's doing. So it'll be programmed until I change it again. And it will also be programmed to the correct numbers. Like if I wanted to switch these, like, okay, so when I throw these, okay, and they get thrown to the crossover, that's I hit button number 1, okay, and it'll always be button number 1 until I change it. If I want to say, okay, well, I decided now when I press number 2, after I select this, if I press number 2, it'll throw it. So I could do either one, one way or the other, and the Switch Kat doesn't care because it doesn't matter. So, but that's it for this, and I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little, it's a neat little project, and I will be bringing more modules in the next coming days, months, whatever. We have some bridge modules to go through. I have 2. They're both manufactured by Klondike, and they turned out awesome. So we'll go into that, give a little show how the water looks, and we're going to start a how-to series as far as going with making how I make mountains, how you lay track, doing the water. That's a big thing, and there's old school ways of doing stuff. Like there's the using 2-part epoxy all the time for making water. And I gotta tell you, it's not the only way. And there are plenty of videos that are out there on YouTube right now, and instruction books all over the place that show you different ways of doing stuff. But wait till you see how we do water. So with that, I'll leave you with this next video. So like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you later.